My wife told me she was going to carry her ex-boyfriend's baby over dinner at Olive Garden, right between the breadsticks and the salad, like she was mentioning a weekend trip to Target. So, I've made a decision, Gia said, twirling pasta on her fork with that casual confidence she'd always had. I'm going to be a surrogate for Godwin and Melissa. They've been trying for years, and they just can't have kids. I offered to help. I set down my water glass carefully, the ice cubes rattling against the sides. We'd been married for 6 years, together for 8. I thought I knew this woman. Godwin, I said. Your ex-Godwin? Yes, they're desperate, James. Melissa has some condition. I don't remember the medical term, but she can't carry a baby. And Godwin's always wanted kids. I can help them. And you decided this when? Last week. I ran into them at Whole Foods. We got coffee and caught up. They told me everything they've been through, all the failed attempts, the heartbreak. I just felt like I needed to do something. I looked at my wife of 6 years. Really looked at her. Gia was beautiful. Everyone said so. Blonde hair always perfectly styled, green eyes that sparkled when she laughed, a smile that could light up a room. She worked as a marketing coordinator at a tech startup, made decent money, had a good life, our life. You offered to carry your ex-boyfriend's baby, I said slowly, making sure I understood correctly. It's not like that. It's medical, clinical. They do IVF, use their embryo, and I'd just be the carrier. It's completely normal. People do this all the time. Normal people, not wives who don't consult their husbands first. Gia's smile faltered slightly. I'm consulting you now. No, you're informing me. There's a difference. James, come on. I thought you'd be supportive. This is a beautiful thing. I'm helping people I care about create a family. People you care about? You haven't mentioned Godwin in years. Now suddenly you're willing to spend 9 months pregnant with his child? It's not his child. It's his and Melissa's child. I'm just the oven. The way she said it, so casual, so dismissive, told me everything I needed to know about how much thought she'd actually put into this, how much she'd considered me, our marriage, our future. What did Godwin say when you offered? I asked. He was shocked at first, but then really grateful. Emotional, actually. He started crying. Said I was an angel. Melissa cried, too. They've wanted this for so long. I bet they were grateful. Free surrogacy from an ex-girlfriend. That saves them, what, $60,000 at least? Gia's face hardened. That's not what this is about. Isn't it? Did you discuss compensation? No. I don't want their money. I want to help them. Gia, professional surrogates get paid because it's physically demanding, risky, and life-altering. You're giving that away for free to your ex. You're making this sound sordid. It's not. It's generous. It's insane. She put down her fork, her eyes flashing. I knew you'd react like this. I knew you wouldn't understand. Understand what? That my wife wants to carry her ex-boyfriend's baby without asking me first? You're right. I don't understand that. I'm asking you now. You already made the decision. You said so yourself. You're just looking for my blessing after the fact. Gia grabbed her purse, stood up from the table. I thought you'd be supportive. I thought you'd see this as the good thing it is, but clearly you're too insecure and jealous to understand. She walked out of the restaurant, leaving me sitting there with 2 plates of pasta and a bread basket. The waiter approached tentatively. Everything okay, sir? Just the check, please, I said. I sat there for another 10 minutes, eating my pasta mechanically, thinking through what had just happened. My wife had decided, without consulting me, to become a surrogate for her ex-boyfriend. She expected me to smile and support her. She thought this was reasonable. She was wrong. By the time I paid the bill and walked to my car, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I didn't go home that night. I drove to my brother's place in Bellevue, showed up at his door at 9 p.m. with a 12-pack of beer and a story that made his jaw drop. She what? Kyle said, opening his 3rd beer. We were sitting in his garage, which he'd converted into a man cave after his own divorce 2 years ago. He understood the value of space. Offered to be a surrogate for Godwin Matthews, her ex from college. The baseball player? The guy she dated for like 3 years? That's the one. Kyle shook his head. James, that's insane. She didn't ask you first. She informed me, over pasta, like she was telling me she'd joined a book club. What are you going to do? I took a long drink of my beer. I'm going to let her do it. What? I'm going to tell her it's fine, that I support her, that I understand she's just helping old friends. Why would you do that? Because if I fight her on it, I'm the bad guy. I'm the insecure husband who won't let his wife do a good deed. She'll resent me. Her friends will take her side. Everyone will think I'm controlling. So you're just going to accept this? No, I'm going to divorce her, but I'm going to do it smart. I'm going to protect myself legally and financially before she realizes what's happening. Kyle studied me for a long moment. You've thought about this before. I've thought about a lot of things. Gia's been different lately, distant. She's been texting someone constantly, getting calls she doesn't answer around me. I thought maybe she was planning a surprise party or something. Now I know she's been planning this. With her ex-boyfriend. With her ex-boyfriend. Man, I'm sorry. I know you love her. I did love her. Maybe I still do. But I'm not going to let love make me stupid. If she wants to prioritize Godwin and his wife over our marriage, that's her choice. But she's going to live with the consequences. What's your plan? I pulled out my phone, opened my notes app where I'd been making a list during the drive over. First thing Monday morning, I'm calling Davidson and Associates, divorce attorneys. The firm handled your divorce, right? Yeah, they're expensive but good. Ask for Patricia Davidson herself. She's ruthless. Good. I want ruthless. Then I'm calling our bank. We have 3 joint accounts, checking, savings, and a money market account. I'm going to freeze all of them. Can you do that? According to the research I did on my phone for the last hour, yes. Either account holder can freeze joint accounts during a pending divorce. She won't be able to access the money, but neither will I. It'll all get sorted in the settlement. How much are we talking? About $80,000 total. Most of it from the inheritance my dad left me last year that I stupidly deposited into our joint account instead of keeping separate. Kyle winced. Rookie mistake. I know, but at least I can keep her from spending it before the divorce is final. What else? Insurance. She's on my health insurance through my job. I'm calling HR on Monday and having her removed. She'll get a COBRA notice, but that's not my problem. That's cold. That's practical. Once we're separated, I'm not legally required to keep her on my insurance. And given that she's about to undergo a voluntary medical procedure that'll cost thousands in prenatal care, I'm not subsidizing it. The surrogacy. The surrogacy. Let Godwin and Melissa pay for it. They're the ones getting the baby. Kyle raised his beer. I have to say, I didn't think you had this in you. You've always been the nice guy, the one who avoids conflict. I'm done being the nice guy. Being nice got me a wife who thinks she can carry her ex's baby without consequences. When are you going to tell her? I'm not. I'm going to file for divorce, freeze the accounts, cancel the insurance, and let her figure it out on her own. That's brutal, man. She made her choice. I'm making mine. I spent the night on Kyle's couch, ignoring the 17 text messages and 4 calls from Gia. Around midnight, she sent one final message. I'm sorry for how I handled this. Can we please talk when you get home? I didn't respond. Monday morning, I took a personal day from work. I was a senior accountant at a mid-sized firm in Seattle, and I'd accumulated plenty of PTU. My boss didn't ask questions when I called in. At 8 a.m., I was sitting in Patricia Davidson's office in downtown Seattle, going over the details of my marriage. 6 years married, no kids, no property together, Patricia said, reviewing the notes she'd taken. Correct. We rent an apartment. My car is in my name, hers is in hers. No joint property except the bank accounts. And you want to file for divorce based on irreconcilable differences? Yes. You mentioned your wife is planning to become a surrogate for another couple. Is there any indication of infidelity? Not physical, but emotional? I don't know. The whole situation feels wrong. She's putting her ex-boyfriend's needs before our marriage. Patricia nodded. Washington is a no-fault state, so we don't need to prove anything. But the surrogacy situation is unusual. Has she signed any contracts yet? Not that I know of. She just told me about it 3 days ago. Good. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to file for divorce today. I'll have the papers drawn up within an hour. We'll serve her at work. Do you have her workplace address? Yes. Perfect. Service at work is legal and often more effective. She'll be caught off guard, which is what we want. Simultaneously, you'll freeze the joint accounts and remove her from your insurance. By the time she realizes what's happening, the legal and financial protections will already be in place. How long does the divorce take in Washington? Minimum 90 days from filing to finalization. But with joint accounts and no kids, we can probably settle within 4 to 6 months if she's reasonable. What if she's not reasonable? Patricia smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. Then we make it expensive for her. Prolonged litigation costs money. If she can't access the joint accounts and has to pay legal fees out of pocket, she'll settle quickly. What about the surrogacy? Can I stop her from doing it? Legally? No. She has bodily autonomy. But here's something to consider. Most IVF clinics require psychological evaluations for surrogates. Part of that evaluation includes assessing the surrogate's home stability and support system. If she's in the middle of a divorce, many clinics will refuse to proceed. They don't want the liability. I sat back in my chair. So by divorcing her now, I might actually prevent the surrogacy? It's possible. At minimum, you'll complicate it significantly. And even if they proceed, she'll be dealing with pregnancy alone, without your financial or emotional support. That's a natural consequence of her decision. How much is this going to cost me? My retainer is $5,000. If we settle quickly, probably another $3,000 to $5,000 in total fees. If she fights it, could go higher. Do it, Patricia extended her hand. Welcome to your new life, James. I shook her hand and wrote a check for $5,000. Money I'd earned, money I'd saved, money I was now spending to end my marriage because my wife couldn't see what she was throwing away. By noon, the divorce papers were filed. By 2 p.m., Gia was served at her office. By 3 p.m., I'd frozen all our joint bank accounts. By 4 p.m., I'd called my HR department and removed Gia from my health insurance, effective immediately. By 5 p.m., my phone was ringing nonstop. I didn't answer. Gia showed up at Kyle's place at 7 that evening. I'd expected it. She knew we were close, and she knew he'd take my side. What I hadn't expected was for her to bring Godwin and Melissa with her. Kyle answered the door, took one look at the three of them, and called back to me. James, you got company. I walked to the door. Gia's eyes were red and swollen. She'd been crying. Godwin stood beside her, tall and still athletic at 32, his arm around a petite brunette who must be Melissa. They all looked at me like I was the villain. Can we talk? Gia asked. We can talk through our lawyers. James, please, don't do this. We can work this out. There's nothing to work out. You made your decision. I made mine. Godwin stepped forward. Look, man, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Gia was just trying to help us. This doesn't have to end your marriage. Godwin, with all due respect, you're the last person who should be weighing in on my marriage. I'm just saying, we didn't mean to cause problems. But you did. You accepted my wife's offer to carry your baby without once suggesting she should talk to her husband first. That tells me exactly how much you respect our marriage. Melissa spoke up, her voice small. We thought you knew. Gia said you were supportive. She lied. Gia's face crumpled. I didn't lie. I thought you would be supportive. I thought you loved me enough to understand. Love isn't about understanding terrible decisions. Love is about considering your partner before you make life-altering choices. You didn't do that. So you're punishing me, freezing our accounts, taking me off your insurance. Do you know what you've done? I know exactly what I've done. I protected myself from someone who was about to drain our accounts and use my insurance to subsidize a pregnancy for her ex-boyfriend. That's not what this was about. Then what was it about, Gia? Explain it to me. Make me understand why carrying Godwin's baby was more important than our marriage. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked at Godwin, then back at me. I just wanted to help. At my expense. You wanted to feel like a hero, and you didn't care who paid the price. The embryo transfer is scheduled for Wednesday, she said quietly. In 2 days. We've already paid the clinic $20,000. If I back out now, we lose everything. Then I guess you have a decision to make. Godwin put his hand on Gia's shoulder. We don't have to do this, Vic. We can find another surrogate. We can try adoption. Don't destroy your marriage over this. But I could see it in her eyes. She'd already decided. The embryo transfer would happen. She was going through with it, divorce or no divorce. I'm not the one destroying the marriage, Gia said, looking at me. You are. You're ending this over something that has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with us. You chose them over me. I didn't choose anyone over anyone. I can help them and still be married to you. Not anymore. You made sure of that when you didn't ask me first. I stepped back and closed the door. Through the wood, I heard Gia crying, heard Godwin murmuring something comforting, heard Melissa apologize. Then I heard them leave. Kyle appeared with 2 beers. You okay? I will be. You know she's still going to do it. The surrogacy. I know. And you're still going to divorce her. Yes, even though part of you still loves her. I took the beer, drank half of it in one long gulp. Especially because I still love her. Because if I stay, I'll resent her forever. I'll look at that baby and see betrayal. I'll look at Godwin and Melissa and see the people my wife chose over me. That's no way to live. When did you become so smart? When I realized being nice gets you divorced at 34 with an empty bank account and a wife who carries someone else's baby. Kyle clinked his beer against mine. To being smart. To survival, I corrected. We drank, and I tried not to think about how Gia's hair smelled like lavender, how she laughed at stupid jokes, how she used to curl up against me on Sunday mornings and say I was her favorite person. That woman was gone. Had been gone for a while, probably. I'd just been too in love to notice. The embryo transfer happened on Wednesday at 11 a.m. I know because Gia sent me a text from the clinic. It's done. I'm pregnant. Or I will be if this works. I hope you're happy. I didn't respond. 2 hours later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Foster, this is Leonard Baxter. I'm an attorney representing Gia Foster. We need to discuss the divorce proceedings. I have an attorney. Talk to her. I've already spoken with Patricia Davidson. She's quite formidable. But before this goes any further, I need you to understand the position your wife is in. What position is that? She has no access to money. You've frozen all the joint accounts. She's removed from your insurance at a time when she's potentially pregnant. She can't pay rent, can't buy groceries, can't afford her car payment. You've effectively left her destitute. She has a job. She makes $45,000 a year. She can support herself. Her paycheck goes to bills and living expenses. The savings in those accounts were her emergency fund, her security. You've taken that away. That money is half mine. More than half, actually. Most of it came from my father's inheritance, which you deposited into joint accounts, thereby making it community property. But that's not the point. The point is you're being cruel. I'm being practical. Gia made a choice that affects our marriage. I'm making choices that affect our divorce. That's how this works. She's potentially carrying a baby right now. A baby that has nothing to do with your divorce. A baby she chose to carry for her ex-boyfriend without consulting her husband. Let's not pretend this is my fault. Mr. Foster, I'm trying to negotiate in good faith here. Can we discuss terms for accessing the accounts? Even temporarily. She needs money for basic living expenses. No. No? That's correct. No negotiation, no temporary access. The accounts stay frozen until the divorce is settled. If Gia needs money, she can ask Godwin and Melissa. They're the ones benefiting from her decision. This is unconscionable. This is consequences. Gia thought she could make unilateral decisions about our marriage. Now she's learning she can't. Tell her to sign the divorce papers? Clean split 50-50 on the accounts after my father's inheritance is removed as separate property. She walks away with about $20,000 and her freedom to carry whoever's baby she wants. She won't agree to that. The inheritance commingling makes it community property. Then we'll let a judge decide, but I'm not unfreezing those accounts. Your client made her choice. Now she lives with it. I hung up. Kyle walked into the room. That was cold. That was necessary. You're really going to leave her with nothing while she's potentially pregnant? She's not pregnant with my baby. She's potentially pregnant with Godwin's baby. Let him support her. You know he won't. He's got his own financial problems. Why do you think they needed a free surrogate? Not my problem. But it bothered me, more than I wanted to admit. The image of Gia, alone, potentially pregnant, unable to access money for food or rent or medical care. It wasn't the revenge I'd imagined. It felt hollow. My phone rang again. This time it was Godwin. James, we need to talk about Gia. I have nothing to say to you. She's in bad shape, man. She's crying constantly. She can't eat. She's stressed out of her mind. Do you know what that does to a pregnancy? If this transfer takes, the stress could cause a miscarriage. Then maybe she shouldn't have made such a stressful decision. Jesus Christ, are you even human? She's your wife. Not for much longer. And she made herself not my problem the moment she offered to carry your baby. I'll pay for everything, her rent, her food, whatever she needs. Just unfreeze enough money so she can function. Why would I do that? Because you're not a monster. Because somewhere under this vindictive crap, there's a decent guy who married a woman he loved. The decent guy died 3 days ago in an Olive Garden. The man you're talking to now is the one who survives the fallout. I made a mistake, okay? I shouldn't have accepted her offer without making sure you were on board. I was desperate. Melissa and I have been trying for 6 years. 6 years of failures and disappointments and feeling broken. When Gia offered, I didn't think. I just said yes. That's on me. You're right. It is on you and on Gia. You both made this mess. Figure out how to clean it up. I hung up again. This time, I turned off my phone. The next 2 weeks were a blur of legal maneuvering and ignored phone calls. Patricia filed motion after motion, each one designed to protect my interests and complicate Jaya's situation. Meanwhile, Leonard Baxter filed counter motions asking for emergency relief, temporary support, access to accounts. Every single one was denied. The judge assigned to our case, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Carolyn Pierce, reviewed the circumstances and issued a simple ruling. Both parties would maintain the status quo until the divorce proceedings concluded. The accounts stayed frozen. Gia stayed off my insurance. Everything stayed exactly as I'd left it. Gia was trapped. I learned through Kyle, who heard from his girlfriend, who heard from a mutual friend, that Gia had moved in with Godwin and Melissa. She couldn't afford her share of our apartment rent, and they'd offered her their spare room. The irony wasn't lost on me. My wife was living with her ex-boyfriend while potentially carrying his baby. The pregnancy test came back positive 2 weeks after the transfer. Gia was pregnant. The embryo had implanted successfully. In 9 months, Godwin and Melissa would have a baby, and my wife would have destroyed our marriage for nothing. I waited for guilt, for regret, for some sign that I'd gone too far. It never came. Instead, I felt vindicated. Gia had made her choice. She'd prioritized Godwin and Melissa over me, over our marriage, over our future. She'd assumed I'd just accept it, just go along with whatever she wanted, because that's what I'd always done. She'd been wrong. The divorce proceedings moved forward. Patricia was relentless, arguing that my father's inheritance, $60,000 of the $80,000 in our accounts, should be considered separate property since I could prove it had been kept separate for 6 months before I stupidly deposited it into our joint savings. It's a gray area, Patricia explained during one of our meetings. Community property law in Washington says anything acquired during marriage is joint, but inheritances are an exception if they're kept separate. You commingled the funds by depositing them into a joint account, but only recently. We can argue that was a mistake, not intent to make it community property. What are our chances? 60-40 in our favor. Judges tend to protect inheritances, but it'll depend on how Gia's attorney argues it. And if we lose? Then it's split down the middle. You get $40,000, she gets $40,000. And if we win? You get $60,000 plus half of the remaining $20,000, she gets $10,000. I want to win. Then we need to be strategic. Leonard Baxter is going to paint you as vindictive and cruel. He's going to say you left your pregnant wife destitute. We need to flip that narrative. We need to show that Gia made a reckless decision without considering her husband, and you're simply protecting yourself from that recklessness. How do we do that? We subpoena Godwin and Melissa. We put them on the stand and ask them about the surrogacy arrangement. We make it clear that this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision by Gia. This was something she discussed with them multiple times without once mentioning her husband. We show a pattern of deception. Will that work? It'll work if they tell the truth, and they will, because lying under oath is perjury. The depositions were scheduled for 6 weeks after I filed for divorce. I attended Gia's deposition, sitting in Patricia's conference room, watching my soon-to-be ex-wife answer questions under oath. She looked terrible. The pregnancy was showing already. She was nearly 8 weeks along, and the hormones combined with the stress had taken their toll. Her face was puffy, her eyes hollow, her hands shaking as she signed the oath paperwork. Mrs. Foster, Patricia began, when did you first discuss becoming a surrogate with Godwin Matthews and Melissa Matthews? About a month ago. And did you discuss this with your husband before offering to be their surrogate? No. Why not? I didn't think I needed to. It was my body, my choice. Your body, your choice. Interesting. Did you consider how this decision would affect your marriage? I thought my husband would support me. Based on what? Had he ever expressed support for surrogacy? We'd never discussed it. So you made an assumption, and based on that assumption, you offered to carry another man's baby, your ex-boyfriend's baby specifically, without consulting your husband. It sounds worse when you say it like that. How would you say it, Mrs. Foster? Gia's lawyer objected. Argumentative. Patricia smiled. I'll rephrase. Mrs. Foster, how would you describe your decision to become a surrogate? I was helping people I cared about, that's all. People you cared about more than your husband? That's not fair. Answer the question, please. No, I didn't care about them more than James. I just wanted to help them. At what cost? Your marriage, your financial security, your husband's trust. I didn't think those things would happen. Why not? Because I didn't think James would be so cruel. Patricia leaned forward. Cruel? Your husband protected himself legally and financially after you made a unilateral decision that affected both of your lives. That's not cruelty. That's self-preservation. Can you really blame him? Gia started crying. Her lawyer called for a break. I sat there watching my wife fall apart and felt nothing but tired. Godwin and Melissa's depositions were scheduled for the following week. I didn't attend. Patricia said it would be better if I wasn't there, but she recorded everything and sent me the transcripts. Godwin's testimony was enlightening. Mr. Matthews, when Gia Foster offered to be your surrogate, what was your first thought? I was shocked and grateful. We'd been trying to have a baby for years, and nothing was working. Gia's offer felt like a miracle. Did you ask if her husband knew about the offer? No. Why not? I assumed she'd discussed it with him. Gia and James have been married for years. I figured they talked about big decisions. But you didn't verify that. No. Did you ever speak to James Foster about the surrogacy arrangement? Not until after everything blew up. So you accepted your ex-girlfriend's offer to carry your baby without once confirming her husband was on board? I didn't think... That's clear, Mr. Matthews. You didn't think. Did Gia ever mention any concerns about her marriage? No. She seemed happy. And yet, within days of offering to be your surrogate, her husband filed for divorce. Does that seem like a happy marriage to you? Godwin's lawyer objected. Patricia moved on. Melissa's testimony was even more damaging. Mrs. Matthews, did you have any concerns about Gia's offer to be your surrogate? At first, yes. I thought it was weird that she'd offer so quickly. We just reconnected with her, and suddenly she's offering to carry our baby. What changed your mind? Godwin convinced me. He said Gia was just generous, that she'd always been that way. Did you ever suggest that Gia should discuss this with her husband? Yes, actually. I told her she should make sure James was okay with it. And what did she say? She said James would understand, that he always supported her decisions. Did you believe her? I wanted to. But looking back, I think she was lying to us and to herself. Why do you say that? Because if James really supported her, he wouldn't have filed for divorce. It was the most honest thing anyone had said throughout the entire process. The judge reviewed the depositions and scheduled a settlement conference for 3 months after the initial filing. Both parties were required to attend with their attorneys. I walked into the courthouse on a cold November morning, 3 months after that disastrous dinner at Olive Garden, and saw Gia for the first time in weeks. She was visibly pregnant now, about 4 months along. Her stomach had that distinctive roundness that couldn't be hidden. She wore a loose dress and flat shoes, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked exhausted. Godwin and Melissa weren't with her. She was alone, except for her attorney. We sat in a conference room with Judge Pierce presiding. The judge looked over our case file with a critical eye. "This is a mess," she said finally. "Mr. Foster, you've frozen your wife's access to marital funds during a pregnancy. Mrs. Foster, you agreed to become a surrogate without consulting your husband. Both of you have made terrible decisions. Now I'm going to make some decisions for you." She looked at Gia first. "Mrs. Foster, the surrogacy arrangement is irrelevant to these proceedings. You have bodily autonomy, and your husband cannot prevent you from being a surrogate. However, your decision to pursue surrogacy without spousal consultation shows a fundamental lack of respect for your marriage. That's noted." Then she looked at me. "Mr. Foster, freezing all marital assets without providing alternative support for your wife during a pregnancy, regardless of whose baby it is vindictive. You had other options. You chose the harshest one. That's also noted. Now here's what's going to happen. The inheritance from your father will be considered separate property. You'll receive $60,000. The remaining $20,000 in joint accounts will be split evenly. Mrs. Foster gets $10,000. That's her settlement." Gia's lawyer started to object. Judge Pierce held up her hand. "I'm not finished. Mrs. Foster, you'll receive $10,000 and whatever personal property you brought into the marriage. Mr. Foster, you'll receive your inheritance, your half of the joint accounts, and your personal property. Both of you will retain your respective vehicles. This marriage is dissolved effective immediately. Do you have any questions?" "That's not fair," Gia said. "I'm entitled to half of everything. You're entitled to what the law says you're entitled to. Your husband successfully argued that his inheritance should be separate property. I agree with him. The remaining joint assets are split evenly. If you'd like to appeal, you're welcome to, but I warn you, appeals are expensive and rarely successful." Gia looked at her lawyer, who shook his head slightly. She'd already spent thousands on legal fees. She didn't have money for an appeal. "I'll sign," she said quietly. We signed the papers right there in the conference room. Judge Pierce witnessed and stamped them. Just like that, after 6 years of marriage, it was over. Gia stood to leave, paused, looked at me. "Was it worth it? Destroying everything we had over this?" "You destroyed it," I said. "I just refused to go down with the ship. I was trying to do something good. You were trying to feel important. There's a difference." She left without another word. Patricia shook my hand. Congratulations. You're a free man. Why doesn't it feel like winning? Because divorce never feels like winning, but you protected yourself. That's all anyone can do. The money hit my account 2 weeks later. $60,000 from the inheritance, plus my $10,000 share of the joint accounts. $70,000. More money than I'd had since my father died. I used $20,000 to pay off Patricia's legal fees. Another $10,000 went to Kyle as rent for the months I'd been crashing with him. The remaining $40,000 went into a new savings account, separate, protected, mine. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill. Started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee dates and dinners with women who didn't remind me of Gia. Went back to work, got a promotion, focused on rebuilding my life. And then, 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I got a phone call that changed everything. James, it's Melissa. I almost hung up, but curiosity got the better of me. What do you want? I need to tell you something. Something you deserve to know. I don't want to hear about the baby. It's not about the baby. It's about Gia and Godwin. I sat down. I'm listening. They're together, Gia and Godwin. They have been for months, since before she offered to be our surrogate. The world tilted. What? I didn't know until recently. I found text messages on Godwin's phone. They've been having an affair since last spring. The surrogacy wasn't about helping us. It was about her wanting to have Godwin's baby. She manipulated all of us. That doesn't make sense. The baby is yours. They used your embryo. No, they didn't. I found the clinic records. Godwin switched the embryo order. They used his sperm and Gia's egg. The baby Gia is carrying isn't mine. It's theirs. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know the truth. Because I'm divorcing Godwin, and I want you to understand that you weren't wrong. You weren't cruel. You were right to protect yourself. Gia lied to everyone. How long have you known? 2 weeks. I've been gathering evidence. I have the text messages, the clinic records, everything. I'm filing for divorce and suing both of them for fraud. Can you prove it? I can prove all of it. And James? I'm sorry. I'm sorry we believed her. I'm sorry we helped her destroy your marriage. Godwin and I were so desperate for a baby that we didn't see what was right in front of us. After she hung up, I sat in my apartment for 3 hours, processing what I'd learned. Gia had been having an affair. The surrogacy was a cover. She'd deliberately gotten pregnant with Godwin's baby and made me think it was some altruistic gesture. I'd divorced her thinking she was misguided and reckless. Turns out she was just a liar. The news broke 2 months later when Melissa's lawsuit hit the courts. She sued Gia and Godwin for fraud, emotional distress, and breach of contract. The local news picked it up. Surrogate scam. Woman allegedly fakes surrogacy to have affair partner's baby. Gia's name was plastered across every news site in Seattle. Her face, older now, hardened by the pregnancy and the stress, stared out from article after article. Comment sections exploded with judgment and condemnation. Godwin lost his job. Gia lost hers too. Neither of them could show their faces in public without recognition. And me? I watched it all unfold from the safety of my new life, feeling a satisfaction I hadn't felt since this whole nightmare began. Kyle called me the day the story broke. Have you seen the news? Yes. How do you feel? Vindicated. That's it? Just vindicated? What else should I feel? I was right. Gia was lying. I protected myself. That's all I wanted. You're not even a little bit sad? I'm sad I wasted 6 years on a woman who turned out to be a liar and a cheat. But I'm not sad I divorced her. Best decision I ever made. You're cold, man. I'm realistic. Gia made her choices. Now she's living with them. That's not my problem. But it bothered me more than I wanted to admit. I'd loved Gia once. Really loved her. And now that love was tainted by betrayal and lies, and the knowledge that everything I'd believed about our marriage was false. The baby was born in March, almost exactly a year after that dinner at Olive Garden. I didn't go to the hospital, didn't send flowers or congratulations, but I heard through mutual friends that it was a girl. 7 pounds, healthy, beautiful. Godwin and Gia were together, living in a small apartment in Kent, struggling to make rent and support a newborn on Godwin's unemployment checks, and whatever Gia could scrape together from freelance work. Melissa won her lawsuit. The judge awarded her $50,000 in damages, money Gia and Godwin didn't have and would probably never be able to pay. And me? I sat in my comfortable apartment, drinking a beer, watching the sunset over Seattle. And finally, finally, felt like I could breathe again. 2 years after the divorce, I was sitting in a coffee shop in Fremont when Gia walked in. I recognized her immediately, even though she looked different. Thinner, older, tired. Her hair was shorter, streaked with gray. She hadn't bothered to dye. She carried a diaper bag and pushed a stroller. She saw me at the same moment I saw her. Her face went pale. For a moment, I thought she'd leave. Turn around and walk out rather than face me. But she didn't. She got in line, ordered her coffee, and when she had it, she walked over to my table. James. Gia. Can I sit? It's a free country. She sat, the stroller beside her. I could see the top of a small head, brown curls, sleeping peacefully. That's Emma, Gia said. She's 2. Congratulations. I know you know the truth, about Godwin, about everything. Melissa told me. I figured. I'm sorry. For lying. For manipulating you. For everything. Are you? Or are you sorry you got caught? She looked down at her coffee. Both, probably. I was selfish and stupid. I convinced myself I was doing something noble, but really I just wanted Godwin back. I wanted the life we could have had if we'd stayed together, and I was willing to destroy everything else to get it. How'd that work out for you? Not great, obviously. Godwin and I are barely surviving. He can't keep a job. I can't get decent freelance work because everyone knows who I am. Melissa's judgment is hanging over our heads like a guillotine. We'll probably be paying it off for the rest of our lives. Good, she flinched. I deserve that. You deserve worse. Probably. But for what it's worth, I do regret it. I regret hurting you. You were a good husband. Better than I deserved. Was any of it real? Our marriage? Yes. At first, I did love you, James. I really did. But then Godwin came back into my life, and all those old feelings came rushing back. I told myself I could have both. You and him? I was wrong. Yeah, you were. She stood up, gathered her things. I won't bother you again. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry, and that you were right to leave me. You deserved better. I know. She left, pushing the stroller out into the gray Seattle drizzle. I sat there for a long time, finishing my coffee, thinking about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the divorce, the revelations, the revenge. And I realized something. I didn't feel angry anymore, didn't feel hurt, didn't feel anything except relief that I'd gotten out when I did. Gia had made her choices. Godwin had made his. They'd created a life together built on lies and betrayal, and now they were living with the consequences. Me, I was free. Free to build a new life. Free to find someone who actually respected me. Free to be happy. That was the real revenge. Not the frozen accounts, or the divorce, or the vindication. The real revenge was moving on and building something better while they struggled with the mess they'd created. I finished my coffee, stood up, and walked out into the rain. I had dinner plans with a woman named Rebecca, a kindergarten teacher, kind, funny, honest, someone who communicated, someone who respected boundaries, someone who was everything Gia wasn't. I smiled as I walked to my car. Life was good. Life was finally genuinely good. And Gia could live with her choices.